Next up is Wendy Ward, and the title of her talk is Preservation of Place and Silica Sand Mining. Wendy is the currently the director of Main Street Red Wing. She's returned to Minnesota after a stint in California where she was active with preservation in the Napa Valley.
Okay, hi everybody, I'm Wendy. I'm the executive director for Downtown Main Street in Red Wing. It's been a real pleasure to be here today. I'm back after 25 years. I'm from White Bear and I now live in Red Wing. I think after listening to everybody, this is going to dovetail really nicely into Sister Margaret's presentation. I'm not going to say anything more about myself and to tell you why I'm talking about preservation of place, but so let's get rocking here. Whether you realize it or not, I'm going to tell you that this conference is about understanding specific skills and or acquiring general activist skills, meaning what specific skills or actions can we take to affect a desired outcome, right? Legal options, traffic mitigation, rehabbing or reclamation of sites, state legislation issues, air particulate monitoring. These breakout options are perfect to hone or build our activist skill sets. But often, in the pursuit of becoming good at something, we forget why we're doing it, why we're putting so much effort into a battle. This talk is going to slow us down for a moment and ask three things. Why are we doing what we're doing? What does preservation of place mean to you? And how can we do this, this process in southern Minnesota? Everyone has a story, right? Why are we where we are now? We are in place because of family roots, because of employment, because of a personal love, and perhaps because of environment. Every place means something, whether we mean a bluff, a river, an old building, a street, a room. But it's not simply one element that gives place depth and identity, but an amalgamation of unique, special attributes. Perhaps noises, sights, smells, a sense of regularity, a sense of beauty. We can see the intersection of, between place and story if we slow down to see why there is value in these places. For me, my place story began in Northern California, the place that nurtured and made much of the person I am today. I landed in a blue-collar town, one very, very, very similar to Red Wing, and was renting an old vernacular home. This is actually not my home I live to, by the way, these are barns. I loved this place. I loved my job. I had great friends. I could ride my bike on the back roads. I could drink wine, eat good food, drive to the big city. It was special. Months after settling in, though, a pre-Civil War large arched stone bridge was torn down, and then another. In my neighborhood, cool little old homes were being so radically modified and remodeled that you could barely see the original fabric or style of the house. Beyond my neighborhood, in other neighborhoods, tear-downs were happening every now and then. And in some cases, homes were literally being shipped down the river. In this picture, this is an amazing old home being shipped down the Napa River. And you can see the barge there on the right. You can see how puny the people are. Very sad story. Several, I'd say a handful of homes are just shipped to other places outside of Napa. So when I was in Napa, I began to very simply ask, what's going on here? I knew something wasn't right, but I had little idea of the processes and entities that determined land use and economic development. I also looked around and saw that little was being done to alleviate this loss, mitigate these losses, advocate for the prevention of these losses. Jump ahead several years later, and I would become a Cultural Heritage Commissioner and then the founder and director of Preservation Napa Valley, a nonprofit dedicated to educational and advocacy efforts toward the preservation and conservation of place. So this is where I began. This is my story, and it hasn't slowed down. Shifting careers there in Napa, I became the local expert in the policy planning and law of preservation. Not just old buildings, but place. I now do the same thing here, but I also throw in a bunch of economic development work. Let's bring this idea of stories to one more level. What if we took this idea of stories to a biological level? What if I told you in our rapidly diminishing prairie bluff ecosystems, in under a square mile you have 200 different species, 200 different stories, birds, beetles, soils, grasses, water, trees, butterflies, rocks, bats, deer, moths, foxes, worms, marmots, mice, flowers, and 185 other living stories that come from one small distinct place. These too are stories of habitation and stories of place. So we have stories as a foundation for place and identity. Let's bring in values. What is the historical value of our bluffs, both culturally and geologically? Ask, how did our bluffs serve as sacred places for Native Americans, or wayfaring markers for settlers and farmers? What is the scenic value of our bluffs? Meaning, can we find these bluffs elsewhere? Are they unique? And I'm going to tell you, yes, they are. There's no other place like this in Minnesota. What is the ecological value of our bluffs? Meaning, what unique biosystems are within and around our bluff country? And if we present these significant critical values, are we not obligated to be thinking of preserving those values for the future? Now, stop and think about this. Those values are predominantly qualitative, right? Next question. How do these less valued values stand up to the quantitative economic values of mining? We must, if we are effective advocates, ask the economic value of our bluffs as well. After all, it is this quantitative, tangible value that is driving this very conference. We must understand the economics of this resource if we are to be effective land use advocates. Local land use discussions are often centered around economics, growth, and quantitative metrics. The legacy of this numbers approach is this, and I'm going to quote Thomas Michael Power from a terrific book that I encourage you all to look into called Lost Landscapes and Failed Economies. He says, a radically modified, fragmented landscape is a result of a numbers approach. Intact ecosystems are rare islands. Their value lies in their fragile, irreplaceable biodiversity. Local economic development, meaning county economic development, needs other inputs, needs qualitative inputs. It needs you. So how do we begin to do something? Or for those who have been on board for a few years, how do we become more effective in our preservation of places, these places that we love? Your presence here is the first step to igniting, re-energizing, or prioritizing the need to be active in the Frac Sand effort. If you are here, you likely will gravitate to a session where you can really hone in on an area that interests you. But I'm going to give you a quick overview of advocacy organizational steps that will help us as a group to work together to be a more effective anti-frac sand mining group. The first 5 we'll go through real quickly. First, understand where you live as it relates to active and proposed frac sand mining. 2, know your neighbors, your local politicians, and where they stand. For me, I live a half a mile from the railroad tracks on property once proposed to be a sand washing facility. I know that all but one of my neighbors does emphatically not support sand mining. 3, be tapped into communications that are sent out telling you when county meetings are taking place. 4, attend those meetings, not only in body, but in voice. Listen, learn, network, ask questions, become smart. 5, if you're not an expert in a specific area, most of us aren't, then be there as an intimate expert and a steward of your landscape. Speak to that and the values inherent in that responsibility, that time, that relationship to your land, your neighborhood, your community. 6, if something we are speaking about today really sparks something in you, water quality, water waste, road traffic or road degradation, air quality, environment degradation and loss, species loss, noise levels, whatever, pursue it and become the expert on it. Read about it, talk about it, research it, go back to school or take a course on it. I went back to school in my late 40s. I promise that if you look into one specific area, the more you look into it and understand it, the more you see that it will dovetail into every other issue I brought up. Water relates to air, that relates to flora, to fauna, to economic development. Everything is working together. We aren't just dealing with a few bluffs here, right? Or just scenic areas, but whole integrated systems. Places worthy of advocacy. Places needing activism. 7, use today's tools, right? Social media and video. What is stronger than the visual impact of mining? Nothing. People must see this to feel it. People need to hear. They need to hear from their friends who hear it from their friends, right? Who Facebooked about this today, by the way? Raise your hand if you did. You gotta get more of you guys on Facebook. Am I going too fast? Because I'm really flying after you get... Katie really scared me. 8, engage youth. Find relevancy and empower them to help spread this message. How does this issue relate to them? 9, use media. We have an issue here that dozens of media outlets want to know about. We have an issue here that several dozen environmental organizations in Minnesota and Wisconsin and around the region and nation are interested in. We have an issue here that tens of thousands of Minnesotans, Wisconsin, Iowans, Illinoisans, care about. Did we have a letter to the editor in 6 papers today? Was a press release to TV broadcasters and environmental organizations? Did we have radio spots? We can go on and on. 10, related to the last 2 points, build an acute graphic video of what this does to the environment, to place, and get that video out. Make it go viral. We are part of the fracking chain that is little known outside of this region. We aren't the end hydraulic fracking stage where large natural gas platforms dot the landscape with methane stacks burning away, right? Very photogenic. We are a relatively tight area where this work can be hidden as well. But this is an absolutely vital part to the hydraulic fracking process. Without this sand, there could be no fracking. 11, build partnerships. Yes, build partnerships so we can build mass, momentum, marketing, cross-platform education, and help carry the load. This can go beyond all of our tables here. We have, 6 or so different partners. We can have twice as many more. So, in closing, I want to ask you a question. What's the difference between mountaintop removal and bluff eradication?
Just spelling.
I like that answer. You're very close. Not much. They're really, really similar. Massive, complete, and irreversible loss of environment, of habitat, disruption of community, scarring of place. When sand mining is added to our one-crop GMO agricultural steam train down here, we have a highly disturbed, likely non-recoverable landscape. Or again, as Michael Power remarks, commodities are cheap, they're standardized worldwide and easily replaceable, while remnant natural landscapes are irreplaceable assets. End of quote. We have a political, progressive, hidden issue from keeping, not able to be seen by us and by our communities. These are places that have deep roots and deep meaning and deep identity and deep memories. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, you must do the thing that you think you cannot do. This battle could be that thing, right? Get mad, get passionate, get educated, get engaged, and remember, this isn't just about a bluff or dirt roads or air water. It's about everything as a whole. interconnected whole that makes it a unique place. We must preserve this place. That's it.